It's 1760, you're a Londoner, and you've just been paid. Most of that money's spoken for already. Rent and bread. But there's a shilling left over and the city knows it. A shilling's real money, mind you. Half a day's pay, maybe a whole one, depending on the man. And London's a machine for getting that shilling off you. It'll show you nearly anything to earn it. So what'll you spend it on? There's lions at the tower if you've got 3 halfpence. There's a madhouse you can stroll through like a gallery. There's a hanging every month or two, and people fight over the good seats. And none of it's hidden away or ashamed of itself. It's the ordinary business of the town. Everybody goes. People who have been to church that same morning go. So that's this film. Not kings, not battles. It's about you, out for the afternoon with silver in your pocket, and the strange list of things Londoners paid to look at. Some of it you'll recognize. Some of it, honestly, takes explaining. Start at Moorfields, just north of the old city wall. There's a building there with the front of a palace, long and grand, gardens laid out before it. And it's a hospital for the insane. The real name was Bethlehem. But say it fast, the way Londoners said it, and it comes out Bedlam. Yes, that Bedlam. The word's older than this building, mind, by a century and a half. The name made the word. The building just gave it an address. It had gone up in the 1670s and it was showy on purpose. The story went that it copied a French royal palace and that the French king took offense. That one's probably too good to be true. But it shows you the scale of the place. And you went in on the visiting days. Near enough anyone could, though it wasn't quite the open door people remember, and the rules crept tighter as the century wore on. You strolled the long galleries and looked into the cells at people who were ill and locked up, and that wasn't a strange way to spend an afternoon. Couples courted there. Families came on the holidays. Some visitors laughed at the patients and some poked at them to get a reaction, and we know because writers at the time complained about it in print. Most people just stared a while and moved on. You've maybe heard it cost a penny to get in. Nobody's ever found solid proof of the penny. What's certain is the box by the door. You'd drop something in on the way out. Everybody did. The hospital kept it, and it wasn't small money. Hogarth put the whole scene in a picture. The last plate of the Rake's Progress is set inside Bedlam, and in the corner stand 2 fine ladies dressed for an outing, come to enjoy the show. He wasn't inventing them. They were his customers. It ran that way for about 100 years until 1770, when the governors shut the door on casual sightseers, and after that you'd need a ticket. And in all that time, hardly anybody thought you were cruel for going. The few writers who said so in print were the odd ones out. You were seeing the sights. That's all it was. 6 or 8 times a year, London held a hanging day, and it wasn't always the whole town watching. An ordinary morning didn't draw much more than a few hundred. But when the name on the cart was famous, the city gave itself a holiday. The route filled up before breakfast, because the show started long before the gallows. The condemned came out of Newgate prison riding a cart, often sitting on their own coffin. The road ran a good 2 miles across town to Tyburn, near where Marble Arch stands today. The whole way was lined with watchers. And the crowd wasn't all jeering, whatever you've heard. It watched and it drank and it bought pies from the stalls. People said they'd stop the cart for one last drink on the way. Nobody's ever pinned that story down. Everybody told it anyway because it's the better story. At Tyburn, you had a choice to make. Standing in the crush cost nothing. Carters sold places up on their wagons above the heads for whatever the morning'd bear. And there was a grandstand too, wooden benches with a clean view of the gallows, and you paid for your place like it was the theater. Londoners called it Mother Proctor's pews after the woman who ran it. Her famous morning came in 1760 when they hanged an earl. Lord Ferrers, a peer of the realm, convicted of murdering his own steward, and half of London wanted to watch him die. She sold every seat. The story says she took more than £500 that one morning, 10 years of a tradesman's wages. Nobody's ever traced that figure back to a source. So believe as much of it as you like. And you took home a souvenir? Sellers worked the crowd with printed papers, the last dying speech and confession of the man on the cart. Plenty of those were written days early by somebody who'd never met him. Nobody seemed to mind. It wasn't journalism exactly, but nobody'd come for journalism. In 1783, the gallows moved to the street right outside Newgate's walls. The procession was gone. The business wasn't. Rooms with a view of the scaffold rented for serious money, and you took your breakfast at the window while you waited. And being in that crowd could kill you. In 1807, outside Newgate, they hanged 3 people in one morning, 2 men and a woman. The hangings took minutes. Then the crowd moved and there wasn't anywhere for it to go. People went down under the crush and couldn't get back up. Around 30 never got up. The counts vary, but that's the scale of it. And who was it you'd all come to watch? Usually a thief, often young, sometimes there for stealing goods worth a few shillings. You weren't going to see justice done. You were going to watch somebody die. And so was everyone else, lords and laborers together. For this one, you crossed the river. And for half the century, that meant a boat because there wasn't a bridge at Westminster until 1750. So you went over by watermen, dressed in your best, with the lights coming up ahead of you on the far bank. Vauxhall Gardens sat on the south side, and for most of the century, the gate price was a shilling. That's steep for a night out. So what did the shilling buy you? Gravel walks ran under the trees. An orchestra played in a painted bandstand. You took a supper box and watched everybody else go by. And that was half the point, because at Vauxhall, the crowd was the show. Dukes shared the walks with clerks, and anyone with a shilling was in. Then, at a signal, the lamps. Thousands of little oil lamps hung in the trees, and they caught nearly all together. In an instant, said the people who watched it happen. Dusk one moment, glitter the next. And people couldn't stop writing home about it. The food was a joke everyone was in on. The ham, the saying went, was sliced so thin you could read a newspaper through it, and you paid the mad prices anyway. Being seen was the product. Chelsea had the respectable rival, Ranelagh, at half a crown, with tea and bread and butter thrown in. Its heart was a huge round hall, and what you did there was walk in circles, round and round, looking at people who were looking at you. Mozart played it once, aged 8. That's the kind of room it was. And Vauxhall kept learning new tricks to hold you. Fireworks went up over the trees. Balloons rose off the lawns, and in 1836, one Vauxhall balloon flew through the night and came down in Germany. Then at the far end were the dark walks, the paths the lamps never reached, and you can guess what those were for. In all those years, the lamps never did make it down there. Funny that. It all ran until 1859 when Vauxhall went dark for good. For 3 days every September, Smithfield stopped being a cattle market and turned into Bartholomew Fair, and the city poured in. 3 days was the trimmed version, mined. It had run a fortnight once in August before the city cut it back. The fair was older than nearly everything around it. In one form or another, it had run for about 700 years. Walking in didn't cost a thing. Nearly everything after that had a price, and the famous price was a penny. A penny got you in with the rope dancers. A penny bought your seat in a theater booth where actors from the licensed playhouses moonlighted in quick, loud plays. A penny more let you at the beast shows, lions and tigers in painted wagons, a traveling menagerie parked in the middle of London. And everywhere you smelled the gingerbread, gilded with gold paper, the one purchase everybody remembered. You ate standing up in the noise, with drums and trumpets and showmen shouting each other down from morning until well past midnight. Southwark had its own fair across the bridge, the one Hogarth painted, until the city shut it down in the 1760s. And at Easter you could take a boat down to Greenwich. The famous game at Greenwich was simple, and here's the whole of it. You climbed the great hill in the park. Then you came down at a dead run, dragging your companion by the hand, the pair of you screaming until your legs wouldn't hold you. Thousands did this. Grown adults, respectable ones. It cost nothing, and Dickens, who stood and watched it, called it the principal amusement of the whole fair. The fairs died slowly and then all at once. The city squeezed Bartholomew Fair for years, licensing it smaller and smaller, and the last one was held in 1855. Respectable London had decided somewhere along the way that a crowd enjoying itself that much was a problem. Keep hold of that idea. It comes back before we're done. For most of this period, only 2 theatres in London were allowed to put on proper plays in the winter season. Drury Lane and Covent Garden, both licensed by the Crown, both enormous. The cheap way in was the shilling gallery up near the ceiling, packed in with the apprentices and the servants. And your shilling bought a marathon. An evening there'd run 4 or 5 hours, a main play and then a lighter afterpiece with songs and dances stuffed between. Turn up late after the 3rd act and they'd let you in for half price. Londoners treated half price as a right, and you're about to see how far they go to defend one, because the audience never thought of itself as guests. It behaved like it owned the house. Down in the pit, sellers moved along the benches with baskets of oranges. and the peel didn't go to waste. A bad play heard about it immediately. Early in the century, some spectators sat right on the stage itself, on benches, close enough to touch the actors, until Garrick finally cleared them off in the 1760s. Then in 1809, Covent Garden reopened after a fire, grand and new and expensive, and it raised its prices to pay for the rebuild. So what would you have done? Paid the new price or stayed home? The galleries found a third answer. The old prices were the deal, and the deal wasn't the management to change. So they rioted. Not for one night. For about 3 months at every single performance, they drowned out every play from curtain to curtain. The actors mimed through it. And the crowd organized, the way only a London crowd could. They wore medals stamped OP for old prices, and they invented a stamping dance to match, and they did it in time, hundreds together, night after night. After more than 60 nights, the management gave in. The pit got its old price back, some of the new private boxes came out, and the manager stood on his own stage and apologized. The boxes upstairs kept their new price mind, so it wasn't a total surrender. But the crowd had made its point, and everybody knew it. So yes, you paid your shilling to see a play. But you were also buying a say in how the house was run. And Londoners spent it. Some afternoons you paid just to look at London itself. Start at the monument, the great stone column by the bridge, put up to mark the fire. You gave the keeper his sixpence at the door and started climbing. 345 steps by the guidebook's own count, one tight stone spiral, with everybody coming down, squeezing past everybody going up. Then the balcony. Rooftops ran out to the hills. The river lay packed with masts, and smoke stood over the whole of it. You went up for the same reason people still do, to find your own roof in it. The column stands 202 feet, and you'll be told that's the exact distance to the bakehouse where the fire began. That's the builder's claim, at any rate, and they carved it into the base. Whether anybody's ever pasted out is another matter. St. Paul's ran the same trade with more doors. Fourpence got you past the first, and there was a fresh fee at nearly every staircase after it. Twopence more bought the Whispering Gallery, where a whisper against the wall slides round the dome and lands in a stranger's ear on the far side. The galleries outside climbed higher, and the fees climbed with them. And if your legs and your purse both held, you finished inside the golden ball at the very top. Room to stand up in there, they said. Londoners paid, step by step, to climb their own cathedral. And from the 1790s, you could skip the stairs because the view moved indoors. A painter called Barker had worked out how to hang a painting with no edges, wrapped clean around you, and he'd coined a new word for the trick, panorama. In 1793, he built the word its own round hall off Leicester Square. One of his first great subjects was London itself. So Londoners paid a shilling each to stand in a dark room and look at the city they were already standing in. And why would you pay for that? It sounds absurd, put that way. It ran for 70 years. After London came fleets and battles. Trafalgar went up while the news was still fresh. Barker himself didn't live to see that one, so his son painted it. And the room stayed full. In 1812, a showman called Bullock opened a museum on Piccadilly, behind a stone front done up like an Egyptian temple, wedged into a row of ordinary shops. A shilling at the door, thousands of curiosities inside. But the reason it's in this film is the thing he showed in 1816. The year after Waterloo, Bullock got hold of Napoleon's traveling carriage, taken on the evening of the battle. Not a copy. The thing itself, with its fold-out bed and its fitted cases, a rolling headquarters built so an emperor could run a war from the road. London lost its head over it. You queued, you paid, and you didn't only look. You climbed inside. Visitors sat where he'd sat and handled what he'd carried, and the crush got so famous that the crush itself became the joke in the print shops. Bullock claimed visitors by the 100,000. He was also the one counting, so you'll take that number with a pinch of salt. But the money was real. One carriage made the museum man rich, and he'd read the town right. A war was ending, everybody had spent years reading about one man, and now for a shilling you could sit in his seat. It was the closest to Napoleon that London ever got. Rooms like his were opening all over the West End. The Royal Academy hung its yearly exhibition and charged at the door, a shilling for most of its run, and said the charge was there to keep the room polite. Rival galleries ran the same trade. By the 1840s, you could spend every week of the year at some paying show or other. Hold that habit in your head, because in 1851, it grew a glass roof. 1851, Hyde Park. A building of iron and glass, so big they roofed over the park's elm trees where they stood, and inside it the Great Exhibition. On the cheap days, a shilling got you in. And the counting was real this time. 6 million visits in 5.5 months in a country of about 18 million people. Plenty were the same people, back again and again. Whole villages came up together on the excursion trains. Inside were machines and diamonds and a fountain made of glass, and you shuffled past it all in a crowd of strangers. And look at what the Great Exhibition was. A vast crowd, packed tight, paying to stare at marvels. You'd done this before. Your grandparents did it at Bartholomew Fair and in the galleries at Bedlam and at every shilling wonder on Piccadilly. The Crystal Palace was the same old London afternoon, scrubbed up and ticketed, because by then the old list was nearly gone. Bedlam had been shut to sightseers since 1770. Southwark Fair was long dead. Bartholomew Fair had 4 years left and Vauxhall had 8. And in 1868 the hangings finally went behind the prison wall, where nobody could buy a seat. Piece by piece, respectable London decided there were things a crowd shouldn't watch. Mostly it decided that after the crowd had already watched them. So it's a London afternoon one last time, and there's silver in your pocket, and the whole city is calling the odds. The madhouse or the garden? The gallows or the fair? And would you have kept your shilling and walked on home? It's easy to say so from here. Nobody walked on home. That was never one of the choices.